Okay, so hopefully you have completed the installation and wiring of your stepper motor and the stepper motor drive. That includes configuring all the dip switches and verifying that the wheel on the stepper motor, the screw is triggering the proximity sensor, but the screw is not in danger of catching on any of the mounting screws or whatnot. Once you are confident in all that, go ahead and download the test program that I've provided on the website for you. So download it, and then once you're downloaded, you can turn your PLC to run mode. Actually, before you do that, make sure you have all your toggle switches. The top two should be in the middle position, and T3 should be in the down position. So basically none of your toggle switches actuated. And the first thing you'll do is push T1 up, and you should get your red lamp on, and that will tell you that the drive stepper drive is enabled. And if you try to twist the wheel now, it should feel like a lot more resistance. If you turn it back off, that should freewheel. And if that's functioning correctly, that means you wired your drive enable correctly. So that's our brown wire here. So turn it back on, red light should be on, wheel should be tough to turn. Next thing you're going to do is hit the orange push button. That should cause the stepper motor to move forward until the proximity sensor senses the screw, and then it's going to back off to where it lines up the dot right in line with the proximity sensor. So if we had started with start with it further off there, and I hit the orange button, which is basically the home process, you'll see it rotates until it sees the screw and then backs up just a little bit to where the dot's lined up. That's probably a little hard to see overhead, but that's the home process, and if it homes successfully, then the orange lamp turns on. Okay, at this point we're going to check and see if our moves work for moving at speed. And so we're going to leave T1 up, and now we're going to turn toggle 2 up. And you should start seeing your stepper motor rotate, and the speed at which it rotates should be proportional to how far your analog input is turned. So if the analog input all the way clockwise, the motor should be turning quickly. And if you turn it all the way counterclockwise, the motor should be turning quite slowly. If you put T2 back in the middle, let the motor stop, and then put T2 down, the motor should rotate in the opposite direction, again with the speed controlled by the potentiometer. And then I can stop it again by putting T2 back in the middle position. The last thing to test is put T3 in the up position. And the motor should rotate for a little while until it finds a position equal to an absolute move. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, so it's now that it's stopped, and you should be able to hear it continuing to run. As I rotate the potentiometer, the motor is rotating basically in a 1-to-1 with my potentiometer. So these are absolute moves. So I'm setting it to follow the potentiometer to an exact position, basically. So you can see if I put the potentiometer all the way to the left, the dot on mine is down at about the 7 o'clock position. If I move it all the way to the right, the dot's down at around the 5 o'clock position. And if you wanted to make that process a little faster, you can put T3 down, hit the orange button again, that will rehome. So that basically zeroes out its position, and now if I flip up T3 again, there's none of that original turning as it got back to 0. Okay, so let's just run through all that once more as the things you can do to check to make sure everything's wired correctly. So I'm going to put my T3 down, put my T1 and T2 in the middle position. The green button is just basically a reset. It resets all of the motor functions to 0. So as if I was starting from scratch again, first thing to do, T1 up. That enables the drive. This should now be stiff to turn. I can then hit the orange button, and that homes it. The motor should jog a little bit and then end up with one of your dots lined up right in line with your proximity sensor. At that point, if you want to, after you just homed it, you can test the absolute move, might be fastest. Do T3 up, and then the motor wheel should basically follow your potentiometer. You can go T3 down, and then put T2 up. It should rotate clockwise at a speed proportional to the potentiometer. T2 down, again rotating but counterclockwise, speed proportional to potentiometer. Okay, hopefully your motor is behaving as expected. If not, send me an email and we can chat about what's going on. Thanks.